Curious what IFS looks like in action? Join IFS Demos with a Z, a live demonstration series led by IFS pioneer Mike Elkin. Each week, Mike takes on real-world challenges through one-on-one role-play, modeling IFS techniques in real time. Whether you're new to IFS or a seasoned practitioner, these sessions offer powerful insights into how the model truly works. Each demo includes an open, inclusive Q&A, so bring your curiosity. Live sessions happen weekly on Zoom, and recordings are available to all who register. Visit ifsdemoswithaz.com to learn more. Welcome to Season 6 of the One Inside an Internal Family Systems podcast. I'm Tammy Sallenberger, author of The One Inside, 30 Days to Your Authentic Self. This podcast is for anyone curious about their inner world and who have a desire to connect to that authentic self. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I am so excited today to have Ashley Booth join our conversation, or have a conversation with Ashley. Ashley has had a unique journey that has led her from a career in oceanography, so interesting, to become a prominent psychedelic-assisted psychotherapist, trainer, and researcher. The through line between these careers has been an unbounded sense of curiosity and a deep empathy for a struggling planet. Her passion is to foster people's connection to a deeper sense of themselves, and through that to something bigger and more awe-inspiring. That's beautiful. Ashley, welcome to the podcast. Let's start where we always start, which is where you are in the world and what do you see out of your nearest window?
I live about an hour outside of Los Angeles, and when I look outside, I see some pepper trees and a blue sky and some white fluffy clouds, and it's lovely.
Good. What's a pepper tree?
It's a tree that has these little red berries on them that look like pepper, like that you grind up, but it's an ornamental, but they grow really fast in this
Oh.
area, and so they're drought resistant, but they're really beautiful. They kind of like these weepy leaves, so it's kind of magical.
I love that. I love that. Well, I am super excited to talk to you today. You wrote so we'll talk about psychedelics, but you wrote a book that is just lovely, and I just have to say that Jeff and I were like, "This book is so good." So let's just drop the name of your book. The name of your book is "Quieting the Storm Within." It's coming out March 25th of 2025. I'm like, "What year is it?" And you say that it's a simple, intuitive guide to your inner world. So tell me a little bit about um, why this book is needed.
Sure. So when I started implementing IFS into my work as a therapist, I realized that very quickly I wanted a resource to be able to give my clients to just get them very quickly up to speed with the framework of the model, because I found like I was having to half explain the model over several sessions, and it was just not. And a lot of people don't, for better or worse, won't read a long book, right? And so this was a picture book and is designed to be read in 20 to 30 minutes. And it's just a sweet way to be introduced to the model, but at the same time, offer some of the really poignant themes in the IFS work. Yeah, and so I looked around the field and I couldn't find anything that was out there that really met my need, or they organized it in a way that felt backwards to me. Sometimes people start with the self, and I always thought that was kind of a hard sell for
Mm,
people that are struggling. And
yeah.
so, I try to meet people where they're at with the book and then slowly introduce the concept of the self later on.
I love that. And so what made you decide to do a picture book?
Well, I'm an artist as a hobbyist. I've been an artist my whole life and have more recently been doing a lot more digital art and integration work with my art. So we can talk more about that when I talk about psychedelic therapy. But uh, I just wanted something that was going to be easy to digest, and pictures are so much easier to grasp with things. And IFS is so visual, and I think so. I'm dyslexic, and it makes me more visual. And so when I'm working with people with IFS, I'm literally visualizing what their parts look like, how they're located in space, how they're interacting. And so it really easily lended itself to something that was a picture book.
Yeah, yeah. So I I love this book so much, I really do, and I appreciate you, sending me the, like, PDF version of it. But
Mhm.
so in the can I give some spoilers away?
Sure. I think if everybody knows what IFS is, like, that
Well,
it's
so
gonna
you
be too.
have these beautiful pictures of the cloud, like the clouds, and then you'll have like the parts are these. It's like a half a cloud, and then self comes in sort of towards middle to towards the end of the book. But
Yeah.
I feel like you do such a good job of the picture itself teaching what then the words teach at the bottom. So
Mhm,
you
mhm.
you really like teach the flow of the model, and then you even have these exercises in it. So it's not just oh, here's the information, like the words of the information and the picture of the information, but then you have these exercises that people can get personal with it. So I love that. And so this first exercise, which I think you do such a great job of, it almost looks like a little bingo card with like words and images, which just makes it so like pleasant, like pleasantly appealing for the reader. But this first exercise is just who's here. So tell me a little bit about this exercise. In this
Yes.
bingo card, it's not a bingo card, but
Wait, so the first exercise in the book is based off of an art therapy exercise by Alicia Dabney, and I saw her present this in a I think in my IFS level 1 training, and just loved it, and it's just a way to break up a piece of paper into several parts, and then ask yourself, "Who's here?" And then you spend 30 seconds or so drawing and writing what that the part is that's right at the top. And then after that 30 seconds, you ask again, "Who else is here?" And then you keep doing that until you've unstacked a whole bunch of your parts. And so I call this parts unstack. And I do this with my clients all the time, and I encourage them to do it right before we jump on our call so that we can then they kind of know who's up and who needs attention before we jump in. So I wanted to include that in the book because it has been such a beautiful resource.
I love that. So it's like a parts mapping, and so you either fold the paper or draw like these columns, like columns and boxes, and then it's just who's here, going inside and just checking in. Doesn't sound like spending a ton of time, but just kind of noticing just organically, and then you can add words, and then what if people always say this? What if I don't know how to draw, or what if I'm not a good drawer? So what
Totally.
do you say to
Tot
those parts of us?
Yeah, so I encourage people to draw if they can. Otherwise, they can be a color or it can just be like scribbles, of like it feels pointy, or words at the, if that's really needed. But it's when you can add all three of those kind of elements of just like how it feels, maybe what it looks like, what is it saying, you can kind of keep expanding on it if you want to make it into a longer exercise.
I love that, and then there's something about this unstacking that helps me say, "Okay, this one's here, here's a circle, and who else is here? Here's an X. Who else is here? Here's the triangle, let's go with the theme. Who else is here? Here's a star." So then what happens then or just find that just naming that and mapping that or unstacking that is enough for this first exercise just to kind of recognize, "Hey, I'm multiple, and there's multiple parts of me."
Yeah, I think that's kind of the first step, and then what you can do as a clinician or as a whoever's doing this exercise kind of later on as you've gotten more familiar with the model is that as you now have gotten everybody down on the page, you can step back and look at everybody as a whole. And that is a helpful way to externalize the parts and step back a little bit from all of the voices that have been, chattering about all their various things that they're worried about.
Yeah, I love that.
And
Go
the
ahead.
the other piece is that when you because there's typically 8 boxes, and when you get to, like, I don't know, 7 or 8, you start to be like, "Alright, well, who else is here?" And then maybe you get to, "Well, there's not really anybody else. It's just me."
It's so expressive. Like, I don't know how you make, like, the clouds expressive. So there's one picture, where it actually has the cloud so the sun is there very sweetly, this is on page 56, looking down at the parts, and you've got the cloud with this, like, hand, like, no like, saying kind of "no" to the sun, and then you have another little tiny, like a darker cloud right behind it with big eyes, it looks maybe scared. So I love that, you just such do a and then underneath it says, "A pat" I'm like, "Can I read this?" It's on my phone. I need,
Sure.
like, probably A path to healing exists with the self acting as the guiding light. However, our helpers, which totally love how you name these, like skeptical bouncers, often forget that this VIP guest, the self, is on the list and are hesitant to trust it with such a vital gig. I love that. So tell me about um first of all, it's so simple and so clear, which I think is beautiful, and we all need that. Tell me about your terms proactive helpers and reactive helpers.
Sure. Yeah, so I struggled with this a lot. When I was writing the book, I really felt like it was important to name the parts by their unburdened essence. And Mariel Pastor talks about this a lot in her work, and so I've spoke to her and had some consultation with her about this for the book. And it felt important to acknowledge what the protectors are, right? They're just trying to help. And when we can label them as helpers, it conveys something different. And so while at the same time I acknowledge in the book, that there are certain types of proactive helpers that are also called managers in sort of more traditional IFS, or that there are reactive helpers that are called firefighters in traditional IFS, um, but that they're helpers and that they're just trying to help us get our needs met. And then I spent a really long time trying to figure out what to call the unburdened exiles. That it took me years. That was, like, one of the hardest things because and what I realized actually through talking with Marielle was that they're just parts. It's not that they're particularly necessarily inner children, right? Because sometimes we have adult parts of us that have been burdened and can be unburdened. It's just that we have parts and that some of them take on roles. One of the other things that I put into the book that was sort of implementing some nonviolent communication approaches, which was to be really curious about what the needs are that these parts are advocating or communicating. And that's what I really unpacked this to is seeing that all parts are either communicating a need or like that they're the steward of the need and they're feeling it firsthand and expressing what that need is, or they've taken on the role of helping that need get met. And that's why they're a helper. And
Wow.
so
Okay.
when
Mm.
we can contextualize it that way, we can start to very quickly get down to what is this part need? Or what need is this helper part trying to get met?
Yeah, I love that. You even do a great job of giving us some examples of those needs. Like I need safety, and you got a cloud that's kind of holding itself. I need novelty. I need to be creative. I need stability. I need play. I need purpose. I need autonomy. I need intimacy. I need hope. You also call them our advocates, like they're advocating for our needs. So tell me more about that. I love that. I feel like it's one of those moments that I was like, "Oh, I have not thought of it that way before."
I spent a lot of time so another sort of tangent in making the book was to see how different people in the therapeutic field or the field of psychology have defined what our kind of universal human needs are, and trying to kind of categorize them and understand them, and so I kind of did my own categorization in the book, and the very subtle thing about it is that the clouds are over top of a mountain, and so it's a little bit of a nod to, Maslow's hierarchy because it's a pyramid, but then as you go up the mountain, you get higher to the more self-actualization needs, so that's a little Easter egg in there. But it's
I'm like, "That is very interesting." Just visually, wow, okay.
we have such a complex layering of different needs and they're all important but they are they do have a hierarchy, right? We can't move to a space of being more socially connected if we don't have food and shelter, right? That becomes a much harder thing to move out of survival mode if we don't have those base needs met. And so attending to what those needs are allows us to create more opportunity to be able to expand into our fullness, right?
Mm.
And make space for our more spiritual nature, which is, I think, what the self is.
Mm, I love that. So when you do your unstacking, it's almost like the target part needs to be the one that's like has need for like food, shelter, and safety, like sort of the bottom on up the pyramid. Like if there's another one that's like, I want to have a beautiful relationship, it's like, well, we need to eat food and drink water first. Like sort of those parts need to be attended to first.
Right. And so those are always going to be the ones that are going to be prioritized higher
Yeah.
than the ones that are advocating for other types of needs.
Yeah.
Um,
And if they never get their needs met, then we're always staying there on the bottom, and then we're not living kind of more fulfilling or more
yeah.
spiritual, attuned lives that we wanna
Yeah.
live.
Our innermost nature wants us to connect the humanness of the reality that we're living in on this plane and that sort of spiritual connection. And so when conditions both internally and externally can allow that to happen, then there's a natural unfolding, right? A holotropic moving towards wholeness process that unfolds.
I hope you're enjoying my conversation with Ashley Booth. I wanna take a moment to thank one of our partners who makes the One Inside possible. A supportive community can change everything when you're learning and applying the IFS model. The Collective is an online space for IFS therapists and practitioners to connect with like minded professionals, build confidence, refine their skills, and feel truly supported as they bring IFS into their clinical work. Inside, you'll find expert consultation, supervised and peer-led practice groups, monthly guest speakers, recorded demos and demo groups, and self-led workshops, all designed to help you flourish as an IFS practitioner. Learn more at innerworldcollective.com or find the links in the show notes. Tell me about how you decided to picture yourself the way you did. I'm so curious about this.
In the book, for people that haven't seen it yet, the book uses the metaphor of clouds being parts and the sun being the self. And I had kind of heard that metaphor around, and I just felt so resonant to me, and it connected with many of the psychedelic experiences that I've had, and so I loved that. And so I continued to use this theme of sort of weather
Well, yeah.
as an ongoing theme, for describing this. And so the self is the sun, and the way that I picture the self is as a sun, but it's also kind of as a little Buddha, or in sort of these robes and just kind of being this peaceful, calm presence. And so
And like it has an outfit.
it has an outfit, yeah. In some of the pages, it has an outfit. Sometimes it's just the sun.
Yeah.
Um, but that's what it feels like for me to be in self.
Mm.
It feels like that calm presence that there's nowhere to be,
Mm.
or nowhere to go, just to be there and
Mm-mm.
just kind of be shining its light.
I love that, it's beautiful, and there's sweet pictures of, like, this, uh this Buddha with the outfit and the sun and, like, holding the clouds, it's so sweet. It's just so sweet. I love the one where there's sort of a manager part or a proactive helper that's kind of chilling under the palm tree with a little cocktail, and then self has the other part, like, "Hey, we have to notice this," and, yeah, it's like a great example of our parts, like, we don't have a job to do anymore.
Yeah, it can chill out on the beach with a cocktail.
Yes, please.
At the very beginning, I introduced sort of like that there's just a face of a person, and that's on the cover of the book. And they're gray, they're nondescript. I tried to make it sort of as neutral as possible, kind of androgynous, not, not overtly any kind of particular race or ethnicity, just, a person, right? And our essence of being a person. And that's invited to be the reader, that is going through and maybe having these different thoughts, and then that comes back in at the end, to be able to be our humanness and then be in the presence of all of our parts.
Yeah, I love it at the beginning, the face is actually like, the clouds are incorporated in the face,
Mhm,
which is a
mhm.
beautiful picture of multiplicity, that it's like, here is the face with all the different clouds on it. I love that. That's so great. And then at one point, there's sort of words that you can kind of really teaching. You do such a good job of teaching the model visually, um, that it's like just looking at this picture of a face with puzzle pieces, sort of puzzle pieces, clouds, with the words really like, oh yeah, like that would make so much sense that, I've got all that going on at the same time. Okay, so at the end of the book, you have these great resources. So tell us what happens at the end of the book.
Yeah, so I take people through some exercises at the end to kind of apply some of the things that they've learned in the book, and then I point people to the book website, and I had just been making little worksheets for myself for my clients, and so I felt like making those available to um, readers as a little free thing. So there's one that takes people through the exercise of the parts on stack. There's what I call a parts stats sheet, which is a little bit kind of a nod to, like Dungeons& and Dragons where, you create a character and you have to, like, understand all the different kind of aspects of the character, and so is it an animal? How old is it? What are its needs? What is it afraid of? What are its little sound bites? What does it look like? And so it kinda helps. It can be used for people to unpack and understand and ask some questions about who their parts are. And then some journaling exercises that I just sort of organically came up on my own. I don't know if anyone else has come up with the same thing, but just to be able to make space to do a dialogue between our journaling that specifically is a dialogue between self and a part. And so there's different columns to be able to um, make space for what is just how is yourself responding to this part. So obviously people need to have a little bit of self energy to be able to do the exercise, but it can be really helpful. So those are some of the freebies that are on there. And then because I kind of wanted it, I made like some mugs with like the little characters on it just because I thought they were really cute, and like some magnets and stickers so that people can put them in their journal and give the clouds of their part like a little face. So um, they were just kind of things that I thought I would like, and it wasn't, just thought it was fun for other people too. So
Yeah, I love I
those are on
love
there.
that because if you resonate with the book and you resonate with the images in the book, this is a way to take that to another level, make it really personal, make it your own, and like integrate it into like what you're already doing, like your personal work you're doing. Yeah,
Yeah, and
that
it's
was
so
great.
important to just have reminders in our everyday life of that we're staying present with our parts, we're staying present with what our needs are, we're staying present with what our values are, and so having things that are environment like little magnets for your fridge or a mug, that reminds you of, that you can take a
Mm,
breath
yeah,
is
yeah.
just helpful.
It is helpful because we do this work, and even if it's yeah, even if we check in with our parts every day, there's still a lot of time during the day where we're blended, and, so I love that. I love the sort of putting these reminders everywhere to, like, take a deep breath, have more space, unblend a little bit. Okay, so I wanna shift and talk about your psychedelic work. So you said that, that clouds and self, that's something that we all talk about that in the IFS world, but that you said you had some psychedelic experiences that kinda solidified using clouds and self. So can you tell us about would that feel okay to tell us about that?
Sure, sure. Yeah. I've had many psychedelic experiences, which is why I'm an advocate of psychedelic therapy, and it's why I got into therapy, and that's why I shifted from a career in oceanography. And what I realized through my experience is that we weren't going to protect the oceans and the rainforests and the animals until we healed people. And so that shifted me and realized that instead of documenting the decline in the environment, which felt really important, but also really hard for my soul to sit with, um, to move to promoting psychedelics as a tool for people to connect with both nature, with a deeper sense of themselves, and to something bigger than themselves. And through many of my experiences, I connected to something bigger than myself that felt like an infinite light, and a space of love and compassion. And, I think that's what I kinda introduce the self as in the book, is that it's something that has been named in religions and philosophies for thousands of years all over the world, and we're all pointing to the same thing.
Had you always done psychedelics, or sort of how did you enter the world in psychedelics?
Sure. Burning Man, I guess is the short answer.
Okay.
But yeah,
You had an
it's
experience
been
at Burning Man that was.
well, I had many experiences in a lot of different contexts and had realized that they weren't the boogeymen that, the drug war had portrayed them as, right? Not to say that they don't have their risks, but that we need a context and a container and an intention to be able to work with these things, and that they are gifts, that help people reconnect with themselves, and the deepest nature of themselves, right? The self.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so, uh, yeah, so I had had numerous experiences over different years, and then got into deeper and deeper experiences, and they got more and more mystical, and
Mm,
it changed me
mm.
for the better.
Well, I love that because you were like, it sounds like your heart was broken in your career. Like your heart was broken for what was happening to the earth and the oceans. And then you were having this other experience, this mystical, spiritual experience. And I'm like, and then you said, and then you're like, okay, I could put these two things together. Like I could somehow put these two things together.
Well, I think it was feeling a balm for the grief
Mm,
of, as I said in my bio, like, the of a healing of, a suffering in a world that needs some healing. It spoke to a very deep place in my heart, and it gave a bigger context to the pain of seeing all that destruction,
mm,
and that maybe there's something bigger going on here,
mm.
and that we can participate in the co-creation of what's happening here.
And then did you find that my guess is, I think I might have said this to you too, that the book kind of comes out of that or kind of comes out of a need with because you definitely have a specialty in working with psychedelics, and I wanna talk about that, too, but it sounds like the book really came out of a need, that you were seeing in that community.
IFS so beautifully blended, and I learned IFS so I was a therapist on the MAPS, MDMA clinical trials for PTSD, and so through the training on that, many of the trainers have, of the MDMA-assisted psychotherapy were IFS trained, and so while the model that they use in the clinical trials was not IFS, it was influenced by it in a way, and so one of the modules that you could do was to learn about IFS, and that's how I got introduced to it, and so that was already kinda integrated with it, but it finding different ways to be able to make that more accessible, but I also wanted to lead people to a place where they could pause and be in a state of awe that we have a self. And I've had even in my IFS training, I had in one of the exercises we did, like breakout groups, I had a mystical experience when I was connecting with, a part that was grieving, and then I fell into myself and realized that the nature of self was a gift, and that was the resource, the act of mercy almost, to be able to have this essence inside of all of us. While I know that spirituality is a little bit of a hard sell for people, and it's a hard word, and there's a lot of religious trauma that's out there, but I wanted to allow people to kinda get to this place to be able to experience whatever that means to them, and connecting with self, and being sort of in awe and wonderment at the mystery of it all.
Hmm. That sounds amazing, and it sounds like also there's so much we're recording this in February. There's so much pain and suffering happening right now. I mean, it's always been, but it just feels like it's very up, for us in the United States right now, and so I'm loving what you're saying because it's like not it's not the answer, and I know we're kind of, obviously we love IFS, but it feels like the answer. It feels like the answer.
It feels like it feels like it's giving you tools and a map to what feels real.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and, and I think a lot of the deeper work that like Jung points to is that in our modern society, we've lost a connection to the sacred. And I believe that that is the reason why we're suffering as much as we are, because we have lost the bigger context of what we're doing here in these
Wow.
bodies.
Wow. Wow. Wow, that's so
So
beautiful. Mm.
so any way that we can help people, mm, be open to
Yeah.
maybe discovering that for themselves,
Yeah.
and whatever that, and that's what I think is so beautiful about psychedelics. It's not dogmatic. It's a way for you to be able to connect with something for firsthand experience and decide for yourself, or experience it more, or be in rapture of something else,
Mm.
right? And it's
Yeah.
and I think some of us have kind of found what language resonates with us to be able to describe what's happening there, but it's discovering it for yourself.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I think that it sounds like because there's been so much religious trauma and so many like bad experiences with religion or like spirituality in that way, there's all these clouds, there's all these protectors that keep us away from that. So that even imagining connecting to the sacred inside of me, around me, um, that I think that people can just maybe notice what parts for them are coming up right now, even just mentioning these things.
Yeah, yeah, right. And like, religious trauma, or a lot of people that have kind of, mm, put anything that seems woo woo or spiritual into a box, and that's been judged, or
Yeah, yeah.
heaven forbid the word woke, right?
Oh, yeah,
Like anything that goes into this box that gets labeled in some kind of way, but it keeps people from being challenged into looking inside, right? And questioning what they've been told.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. It feels yeah, there's something it's interesting what's happening for me as you're talking. I almost feel a heaviness for that, um, like, purpose of how do we all start like, how do we continue or start connecting to more sacred, like, sacred inside of me or, um yeah, almost like creating practices or yeah, I don't know, something's happening. I can feel some thinking parts happening, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. Well, what I work with my clients on, is we connect to what do you value,
Mm,
and then how do you make a ritual around what you value, and what are
mm,
the
mm.
qualities that you want to embody, because that is going to be the thing that you're in service to. And so, and this is how I talk to my clients a lot. I get quite existential and like big picture, because I think that it creates the context. And so, we can see that religion has many elements to it that are really important for humans. And while they've kind of gotten sullied because of, the dogma, or the fundamentalism, or whatever it is, but we regularly need to connect with community. We need to be reminded of our values. We need to have a place to move into catharsis in a communal way, to be able to process the struggles and stressors of being human, right? And religion, whether you're going to a temple or a church, that's often a place that you do those things, and a place to be of service. And so in the secular world that we live in, we don't have that. And so we have to we're tasked with a heavy load of having to create that for ourselves, or to build that within ourselves in our communities. And so it feels all interrelated to me.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that, and then, like, right, our parts respond by either like trying to numb that, like that need, like I can't have that need, or try to get that need in other places that maybe aren't as fulfilling or not the sacred.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Um, we all need to be able to connect with um, the love and the compassion that's available to all of us that doesn't judge,
Mm.
and our parts need to be held by that, right? And
Mm.
and our self is the conduit for that to happen.
Ashley, thank you. Thank you for this. Thank you for your words, for your
Mhm.
amazing book. Is there anything else you want to say before we go, before I ask you that last question?
No, I'm just feeling really happy right now to be able to share this with you, and my hope is that people will resonate with the book and share it, and that it will support people in their path back home to themselves.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, last question. If you had to do something different in your life, different than what you're doing right now, what would you do?
Probably be a full-time artist.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But I love what I do, and I also love doing art, so I'm kinda trying to do it all.
I love that. And you even said earlier that you're integrating art with the psychedelic
Mhm.
assisted therapy you're doing too.
Yeah. Yeah, I use art as a way to capture the visions that I have of myself, as I learn about myself deeper, and so, uh, yeah, at some point, maybe I'll share those with the world, but for now, they're just for me.
I love it. Well, if you ever do, then you need to connect with me because I am a huge fan. I love your book, Quieting the Storm Within. It's great. Your website is ifsandbeyond.com. Anywhere else people can find you?
Mhm. Yeah, so my personal therapy, website is ashleybooth.net. So that's where you can find out about more about my practice, the places where I teach, consultation, ketamine work, psychedelic integration work. It's all there.
Yeah. I feel like we should maybe come back and do a whole session on that specifically, a whole episode on that specifically, because I feel like there's a lot more we can talk about there.
Yeah, I do a lot of teaching around how to integrate IFS into ketamine work, and other psychedelic therapy work. So
Yeah.
that's a
All right.
whole
So let's
other
do that. Does that
chapter.
sound good?
Sure, happy
All
to.
right. Thanks, Ashley, so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you left a rating, a review, a like, comment, share with your family, your friends. That would mean so much to me. My book is available at your favorite independent bookstore or on Amazon. You can visit my website, tammysallenberger.com, or you can download a free Get to Know a Should part of you. You can follow me at IFS Tammy on Instagram and at The One Inside on Facebook and on YouTube. Jeff Schrum co-produces The One Inside, and I am forever grateful for Jeff. Also thankful for Jack Rudern for creating the music, and just thank you for listening. 6 seasons, over 1 million downloads. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you in this community. I'll see you next time.